The second quarter of 2023 began with a seamless transition from the first, with WrestleMania weekend coming to a close. I feel similarly to April as it did to March. Despite so much going on in the world of wrestling, a lot of it felt very much fine. Not entirely great, but not necessarily bad either. I didn't think AEW or WWE had a particularly great month when it came to weekly television, so maybe that's why I feel the way that I did. I do, however, feel that this month had much clearer standouts in mind when deciding what matches I wanted to talk about in this series where I document my favorites over the course of a calendar year. If this is your first time finding my videos, here are some terms and conditions as to how I go about doing this. First, it's obvious I will not have seen every single match to take place. Time and money are finite things, and I have some major blind spots compared to other channels, blogs, or podcasts. The great part is if there's something I haven't seen that you have, I'd love to hear your recommendations so I can add them to a separate watch list. Second, favorite and best are different things, and my favorite matches may differ from, say, something critically acclaimed by Wrestling Observer newsletter. It's not a top 10s or a hidden gems type thing either. My selection of matches is simply based on my enjoyment, rather than star ratings, cage match ratings, television ratings, etc. And last but not least, a spoiler warning for match finishes. By the numbers, I watched 217 matches spanning 12 promotions. Here are some of my favorites from April of 2023. I'm surprised I haven't talked much about Gunther yet in this series, given how reliable of a TV wrestler he is amongst WWE's main roster. Despite his fantastic run in 2022, he's only defended his Intercontinental Championship twice this year. I really think that WWE's television could have greatly benefited from more of him, but clearly they were saving the marquee title defense for WrestleMania, which you always hope for a promotion to deliver that big match at their biggest show, and I think they delivered here. If you haven't seen WrestleMania this year, I also recommend both women's title matches as well as the WWE Tag Team title match from the main event of Night 1. The Intercontinental Championship match was the standout to me between both nights. The common denominator between all three participants is that they are big dudes who hit incredibly hard. I think you could take a guess what would happen with them sharing a ring. I don't think a play-by-play is necessary here or even an in-depth analysis. However, I do really appreciate how they went about presenting this match. You don't always get these kind of wild brawls in WWE, let alone at their biggest show of the year. Where Sheamus and Gunther had gripping drama within their Bombfest in September, this three-way had a much more stubborn and absurd feeling to it. I think that fits more appropriately within the usual WWE triple threat structure, and it makes for a great time. Sheamus hitting Drew 30 times in a row, or Drew hitting a tope con hilo to the outside, by Westside Gunn no less, are examples of this. It's wild, it's dumb, and it's an absolute blast. Gunther capitalizes on this approach by breaking up a pin with a frog splash, only to powerbomb Sheamus into McIntyre before hitting another powerbomb onto Drew to retain. This match proved that this violent brand of wrestling can not only translate but succeed on the biggest mainstream stage. These three had an entire football stadium losing their minds to the display in front of them. Besides Titus O'Neil's commentary, I think my only nitpick with the match is that there wasn't enough Gunther in the closing stretch. Otherwise, I loved every second of this. Easily the highlight of Mania. Dudes rock. One of my goals with this series was to get a better grasp of the pro wrestling landscape as a whole, and matches like this are great at doing just that. April was my first foray into Dragongate that wasn't a Shingo Takagi match or stuff from 2000's Ring of Honor. I went out of my way for the show on the 4th, where Pro Wrestling Noah's Congo challenged for the Twingate titles. I liked what I saw, though the hype around the main event from the next night is what piqued my interest again. I essentially went into this one blind and not having any prior knowledge of Madoka Kikuta or Kota Minoura, and I also watched with the Japanese audio, so I didn't have any context provided to me. I did want to shout out the Open the Voice Gate podcast for giving the background info on why this was such an important match for these two. Kikuta needed to take that next big step after injury troubles cost him a championship 2 years ago. Minoura was also overdue for a strong showing after questionable booking decisions. Both rose to the occasion for a simple yet incredibly effective match. The winner would earn a shot at Shun Skywalker's Open the Dreamgate title at the Dead or Alive event in May, setting the stage for a high-stakes main event at Korakuen Hall. Both on and off-screen circumstances make for a story of righting wrongs for Madoka Kikuta. He's turned face since last having this opportunity, and I think he excels here with natural charisma. His moveset and style also lend towards the fiery babyface role. I noticed him selling his jaw at one point of the match, which I was able to empathize with, having related issues in the past myself. Minoura targets the aggravated jaw and makes for a pretty cool control segment that you don't see all the time. I really enjoy this match for its simplicity. It's excellently paced, everything hits hard, and they both do a great job feeding off of the crowd. Where this match truly shines is the finishing stretch. It's a great balance of exchanging big moves and a natural sense of escalation you'd want out of a big main event. It doesn't overstay its welcome or get in its own way, like many main event scenes tend to do as of late. Both competitors are able to showcase their movesets, Kikuta dishing out lethal chops and hip attacks, while Minoura relies on a variety of suplexes. Kikuta would ultimately pick up a well-earned victory with a discus lariat, which is a pretty cool choice for a finisher. I really enjoyed this match, and now I have both of these guys on my radar. I'll definitely check in with the major events Dragongate has to offer. New Japan have been going through a year of transition, especially in its main event scene. Its upper mid-card has actually been very consistent lately. This was once again the case with April's Sakura Genesis event, with the IWGP Tag Team titles following another great television title match and the three-way for the Women's Championship. Aussie Open entered this match with a chip on their shoulder. These IWGP Tag titles always seem to fall out of their reach, especially given everything that they've been through over the past few years. Debilitating injuries, travel bans due to the pandemic, and since they got back to Japan regularly, a few opportunities slipping through their fingers. They couldn't let this one pass them by though. Bishamon have continued a solid run of form over the past few years, including a victory over Aussie Open in the Tag League final in December. There's a pretty high floor for what these two could put together, but the story of the match ends up as a result of something that wasn't planned at all, making the most out of a pretty scary incident. Early on, Kyle Fletcher lands a moonsault to the outside. He executes the move properly, but upon his landing ends up hitting his head at the base of the guardrail. He draws blood hard way, and the dynamic of the match immediately changes. The Ryogoku crowd rallies behind Fletcher and Davis, and despite the mishap, the pace of this match kicks into the next gear. The final third of the match is based around Bishamon targeting Fletcher with their combination offense, forcing him to fight from beneath. Mark Davis is able to make the save and buy enough time for the two to take over, ultimately winning the match, and finally winning those tag titles that have evaded them for so long. It's one of those instances where everyone made the most out of a potentially bad situation. Everything is elevated by the organic drama and hot crowd, and it's all the better for it. These two teams have pretty good chemistry, and I wouldn't be surprised if their paths cross sooner rather than later. Aussie Open would begin a good run of matches in April, also claiming the New Japan Strong openweight titles in America. Another G-Rex title match makes its way into this video series, with Kaito Ishida's second defense against T-Hawk. T-Hawk made his title's intentions known by slapping Ishida in the face, so you could imagine what type of match they had here. Ishida carries the reputation of hitting incredibly hard, as seen during his tenure as champion. The question was if T-Hawk could match that intensity, and he absolutely did. The challenger wastes no time taking the fight to the champion, with some very mean striking exchanges. The facial expressions and reactions to a very pro T-Hawk crowd get across the level of disdain these two have for each other. Ishida expresses his displeasure with the crowd throughout the match to amplify the pettiness and venom present here. It takes a while for the match to kick into the next gear, but I enjoyed these two taking their time and really stewing in the animosity. It's the longest match in the championship short history at just under 25 minutes. While usually that can lead to some issues, I actually don't mind it here, as long as this doesn't become a trend. This tone of contempt finds the two returning to the strike exchanges frequently. T-Hawk fully intends to cave in Ishida's chest with some of these chops, and Ishida's kicks are thunderous. T-Hawk really begins to take over when he chops Ishida off the top rope all the way to the floor in one of the more memorable spots I've seen this month. Most of the resulting exchanges burst into some great junior heavyweight sequences at breakneck pace, leading to an intense near-fall laden final stretch. T-Hawk would manage to end Ishida's reign at only one title defense, surprisingly, and he'd continue to have a very impressive month, ending April in position to win out his block in All Japan's Champion Carnival tournament. While a little inconsistent in pace, once this match picks up, it doesn't let go. It's very mean-spirited, with the venom in both men striking, expressive facials, and body language. And as always at GLEAT, you could find this one free right here on YouTube, and I think it's worth a chance. STARDOM rounds out this month with their biggest ever show, All-Star Grand Queendom. It was the most successful women's wrestling event this century, and they knew they'd have to deliver big time. A testament to the strength of this card is that you could ask 5 different people who tuned in, what their match of the night was and received 5 different answers. I went back and forth as to which one I wanted to discuss because I did really love the show, but after one more watch, it had to be Syuri versus Chihiro Hashimoto. Smack in the middle of 4 title matches, this special singles match is simply fought over who is the baddest. These are 2 legitimate competitors with accomplished backgrounds. Hashimoto in amateur wrestling, and Syuri in both kickboxing and mixed martial arts, including a stint in UFC. The added stipulation of victory via knockout or submission only leans into these tendencies, where normally a gimmick of that nature could hamper the match. It really helps round out a wonderful card filled with personality and drama, while giving its own flavor and brand of violence. Is it another slugfest? Of course it is. But it's also a much different product compared to, say, the hyper-violence and drama that a match like Julia vs. Tam Nakano was advertised as. It's more grounded in comparison, but given that it's still taking place on a Stardom arena show, a spectacle in its own right. They begin with some chain wrestling and clean breaks, and there's a palatable tension in the air knowing that bombs will begin to fly at any moment. Naturally, it's Syuri who hits a flying knee as the powder keg moment, and things do not slow down from this point on. Hashimoto's guest appearances in Stardom have been an absolute joy to watch. Everything from her presentation, to her moveset, to her in-ring delivery is special. There's so much impact in every move she lands, be it a suplex or some sickening clubbing strikes. Hell, she even lands a spear on the outside in this match. She comes off as an absolute force. Her acumen on the mat is a great foil for Syuri's striking game, making for some insanely smooth mat-based sequences amongst all the chaos. She's also incredibly good at throwing people around and making it look easy. Most of the action here is very cut and dry. What you see is what you get, but what you get is directly tailored to my tastes. You may not get the story-driven aspects of Julia vs. Tom, or the star-making performance Mina Shirakawa had in the white belt match, or even the dream match atmosphere that Mercedes and Mayu brought to the table, but that doesn't take away from how much this match rocked. Sometimes all I need is a knockdown drag-out fight to prove who is the best. You could find issues with this, be it the lack of selling at times, or that it took a while for the crowd to get into it due to it being in a death spot, but none of this was enough to ruin the experience for me. I had a great time with this match. I highly recommend giving this entire card a shot. I believe even the most cynical or tired wrestling fan could find something to like here. It's right up there with Supercard of Honor for my favorite wrestling show of the year so far. And before I go, here are some honorable mentions that weren't brought up by name in the previous entries. Queen's Quest vs. Prominence from Stardom on April 2nd, a breeze of 15 minutes, and another fun Cork and Hall main event. Jamie Hayter vs. Riho from the April 5th episode of Dynamite. Hayter adds to her stellar title reign, this time as a great base for a natural underdog in Riho. Katsuyori Shibata and Alex Coughlin against the Workhorsemen from Ring of Honor April 13th. A wonderfully worked television match that excels in its simplicity, and I'd love to see more of the Workhorsemen in Ring of Honor. Mahime vs. Julia and Syuri from Stardom on April 14th. The very last time Mahime tagged together is celebrated by 4 friends beating the hell out of each other. Zack Sabre Jr. vs. Tom Lawler from New Japan Pro Wrestling Capital Collision April 15th. For the fans of the Graps, and at time of recording, should be for free on YouTube by now. Jack Morris vs. El Hijo del Dr. Wagner Jr. from Noah April 16th. El Hijo del Dr. Wagner Jr.'s GHC national title reign might be the best current championship reign that nobody's really talking about. Yuma Aoyagi vs. Satoshi Kojima from All Japan's Champion Carnival April 23rd. I enjoyed any combination between these two, Kento Miyahara and T-Hawk in this tournament, but this one was probably my favorite. Kojima can absolutely still go on his day. Aussie Open vs. TMDK from New Japan Pro Wrestling, wrestling Satsuma no Kuni from April 29th. Really like this one, think I just like the Bishamon match more. Yukio Sakaguchi and Yuji Hino vs. Harashima and Yuki Ishida from DDT April 29th. I've been enjoying these Harashima tags on the tour dates more than anything that the big DDT shows have had to offer as of late. Kaito Ishida and Kotaro Suzuki vs. Rising Hayato and Atsuki Aoyagi from All Japan April 30th. The first of 2 meetings between these 2 teams in the span of a week, though I think that this 15-minute draw is just a ton of fun. And that's it for me. If you got this far in the video, thank you so much for your time and for hearing what I have to say. Please do all the obligatory YouTube stuff by liking, commenting, and subscribing, and find me on Twitter, OuterStevan. I'll have to be more active on there to avoid getting banned. Let me know what your favorite match from April was in the comments below, and I'll talk to you again next month.